बहुत ही प्यारा सेशन होने जा रहा है, जिसमें बहुत ही प्यारी हमारे साथ एक नॉवलिस्ट हैं और मेरे दिल के करीब एक बहुत ही प्यारी शख्सियत आदरणीय निरुपमा दत्त मैम, जो कि जिन्हें मैं जितना जानना चाहती हूँ, जितना मिलना चाहती हूँ, मैं शायद नहीं मिल पाती, उतना जान भी नहीं पाई, उतना पढ़ भी नहीं पाई, लेकिन जब मुझे मौका मिलता है उनसे मिलने का तो मेरा दिल बाग हो जाता है, मन पसंद हो जाता है। तो एक सेशन अभी हम ये शुरू करने जा रहे हैं और साथ ही हमारा पहले सेशन डिस्कस हॉल में शेड्स ऑफ लव बुक रीडिंग का है। तो जो लोग वहाँ जाना चाहते हैं आप उन पलों को एंजॉय कर सकते हैं। और हमारे साथ इस सेशन के लिए यहाँ पे जो मौजूद हैं प्रिया हजेला जी, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। मास्टर ऑफ फाइन आर्ट्स कि मैं स्वयं करूँगी निर्णय, कितना आसमान कितनी धरती मेरी है, मैं लिखने को आतुर एक बेचैन आत्मा हूँ। तो प्रिया मैम, क्या मैंने ये सही कहा कि मैं स्वयं करूँगी निर्णय, कितना आसमान कितनी धरती मेरी है, मैं लिखने को आतुर एक बेचैन आत्मा? बिल्कुल सही कहा है मैंने। क्योंकि हम सब अंदर से एक व्याकुलता, एक बेचैनी होती है जो हमें लिखने के लिए प्रेरित करती है। हम अपने अनुभवों को जब उतारते हैं तो इतने लिखने को आतुर होते हैं कि कब हमारे जो भाव है वो शब्द बनकर कागज पर उतरेंगे। मास्टर ऑफ फाइन आर्ट्स, 22 साल की कॉर्पोरेट वर्ल्ड के अच्छे खासे अनुभव के बाद जब आप एक किताब लिखती हैं तो वो किस तरह से आपको प्रेरणा मिली, कैसे आपने लिखना चाहा, कैसे ये विचार आया, और इस बारे में निरुपमा मैम आपसे बात करेंगी। तो आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। द डेली गार्डियन डेली में आपके लगातार आर्टिकल्स जो हैं वो छपते रहते हैं और इस नॉवल पर चर्चा जब हम सुनेंगे तो मेरे ख्याल से जितने भी यहाँ श्रोता बैठे हैं और जब जिस व्यक्ति तक की बात पहुँचेगी वो ये नॉवल जरूर पढ़ना चाहेंगे। लेडीज टेलर, इसका नाम भी बड़ा अट्रैक्ट कर रहा है कि ये, और इस नाम के पीछे भी मैम आपका सेशन ले रही हैं तो ऐसे क्वेश्चंस निकलेंगे जो शायद हम तक ना पहुंचते उनके उत्तर। तो बहुत अच्छा सेशन होने जा रहा है, आपको बहुत बहुत बधाई। और निरुपमा दत्त मैम के लिए मैं क्या कहूँ उनके बारे में कि पत्रकार, अनुवादक, पंजाबी, अंग्रेजी और बंद सिंह की जीवनी इनकी जो लिखी गई थी वो काफ़ी चर्चित रही है। खुद उसका रंग पीछा कर रही हैं, कहीं देखी है ऐसी सादगी क्या निरुपमा मैम के लिए कि खुद उसका रंग पीछा कर रहे हैं, कहीं देखी है ऐसी सादगी क्या? जो हमारे बीच में ये शख्सियत बैठी हैं, ये हिंदुस्तान का जाना माना चेहरा बन चुकी हैं और बहुत बड़ी बड़ी सेलिब्रिटीज़ के साथ मैम की टॉक शोज भी हो चुके हैं, इंटरव्यूज मैम ले चुके हैं। तो कविताओं का मैम की एक नदी सांवली जही ये खंड प्रकाशित हो चुका है। 2000 में पंजाबी अकादमी पुरस्कार से सम्मानित है। हिंदी, कन्नड़, बंगाली, उर्दू में कविताओं का अनुवाद हुआ है। गुलजार जी की कविताओं का अनुवाद प्लूटो नाम का एक खंड है जो मैम का लिखा है। और एक मैम की जो एक कविता है मुझे बहुत पसंद है, उसकी चंद पंक्तियाँ मैं लिखकर लाई थी कि एक अश्वेत महिला के सपने बहुत ही निष्पक्ष होते हैं और सच अंधकार में होता है। वह एक दर्द के साथ पैदा हुई है जिसे कोई रंग नहीं दिया जा सकता। वह अपनी आंखों को भरने के लिए पानी का रंग उधार लेती है। तो इतनी ब्यूटीफुल जो ये पंक्तियाँ हैं, इतनी खूबसूरत, इतनी मार्मिक पंक्तियों को लिखने वाली आदरणीय निरुपमा दत्त मैम, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। और प्रिया हजेला जी, आपका हार्दिक अभिनंदन है। इस बातचीत के लिए आप दोनों को बहुत बहुत बधाई और शुभकामनाएं। तो मैं आपको मंच पर आमंत्रित करती हूँ, जोरदार तालियां हो जाएं। और हमारे श्रोता जो है इस टॉक का, इस बातचीत का, इस चर्चा का आनंद जरूर लेंगे। कोई भी प्रश्न होगा तो वो मुझ तक पहुँचाएं। धन्यवाद।
Pleasure today on this rainy day to be at Chandigarh Literati Festival and also the company of Priya Hajela. Novel we are going to talk about and seek inspiration. There's a writer who with her first novel has made quite a stir. After being 22 years in the corporate sector, she decided I'm going to write. When the book came to me, it was the title which first attracted me. And on seeing the title, I went to the book. And and it turned out to be set in the backdrop of partition. It is not that way a book about partition. It is set in the backdrop of partition, and it celebrates the entrepreneur, the spirit of the Punjabis. Of course, it is set in Delhi and some of it in Lahore, and talking about Punjabis, the displaced persons who started their lives again. And I'm very happy that this celebration of her book is happening in Chandigarh, because she must be knowing Chandigarh well. Growing up with her grandparents in Ludhiana, she studied at Auckland House in Shimla and then the Lawrence School Sanaa. So Chandigarh must have been a spot which you were passing through all the time. So welcome, Priya.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to ask you, what is it that drew you to writing, and how did you go to
So I think there's a lot of conversations going on in the room, but I'll thank you. I started writing 8 years ago, and Mr. Sanu here was talking about a guru and therapy, and we're talking about depression and so on. I started writing because I had a very difficult childhood, and but I kind of swept past it. We went to America. I went to America when I was 17. I went to college in America, and I stayed there for 19 years. Came back, met my husband while we were there. While I was there, we got married. Came back 19 years ago, actually. Had 2 children, and just kind of went on with life. And 8 years ago, my son was going to go to college, and I was like, I need to sort of, things from my childhood started to sort of, you have more time on your hands when the children start to grow up and go away and so on. And so there were a lot of things that I needed to deal with, one of which was my mother, who suffered from bipolar disorder. So I think, again, countering Mr. Sanu's comment, he's not paying attention to me, but depression and bipolar disorder is real, and it is a chemical imbalance. What has happened in the near future, my next book is actually about mental health, but what has happened is that people have been medicating for depression, which is not chemical, and a chemical imbalance. They've been medicating for, when you're feeling down and out. Those situations have ended up actually turning into chemical related depression. So it has had a very negative impact, but bipolar disorder is a chemical issue. I've grown up with it. My mother had it. And one of the reasons why I felt like I must write was because I had no therapy, no guru, no art of living. Writing was my therapy. So that's why I started writing. And my book, my first book, is actually my second book. I have written one more for this, which is, I told Nirupama ji, it has just gone to my editor, which is about my mother's life, which is about mental health, and I've kind of really delved a lot. This one is a book about the Punjabi entrepreneurial spirit, and it's about my grandparents and their move and so on. But it's really, what I wanted to write about was something that is really about making it, right? Like really fighting for what you want and just going for it. And I wanted that to come across because that's kind of my way of life. That's the way I live my life. And it's like, it doesn't matter what comes in your way, you find a way around it and you keep going. And that's kind of what the story, I wanted the story to be. It just happens to be set in partition, at the time of partition, which was as rough a time that I think this country has gone through as any.
Well said, well said. In fact, we've had a very strong inaugural address, so we might go back and forth to you. You know, it's the art of living and the art of dying. You know, there's I don't know whether it has to be taught. You know, it comes from within, how to live and how to die. But then, you know, you have to have gurus and other things. They also need a public. And coming back to our novel, you know, what was very fascinating was the cover of the novel. It had a beautiful picture of a sewing machine. And then, first I thought partition, you know, it has been overwritten across languages over these years. What would this novel offer? It was the sewing machine which said it all. The novel was all about the spirit of the entrepreneur, of starting again from, literally rising from the ashes, as it were. And that reminded me of something very interesting. Kailash would be witness to those years of in Hoshiarpur after the partition. You know, there was a couple, they reached there displaced with only a sewing machine, which they had managed to bring with them. So they put up a board, the husband and wife, and started a business. And the husband was to take the orders and the wife was to stitch the clothes. So one person passing came and said, I want a shirt stitched. So they said yes, and the shirt was accepted. But in that hurry, they forgot to take the measurements. They were first-time tailors. So he came back on the appointed day and he said, you never took my measurement and I also forgot. But he said, no, the shirt is ready. So he wore the shirt and it fit him. So he said, how did you do it? And the reply was, the woman said, you know, you looked to me just the size of my husband. So I took his measurements and made the shirt. So this is what the spirit is all about. I'd also like to tell us your journey. Like you went and did a creative writing course. And how did it help? This would be important for many aspiring writers here also.
Okay. Yeah, so what the decision to write was on a whim, I think, a little bit. I just said that there's something that I must do, and I said, okay, maybe I can write. So the first thing I did was actually, I did a NaNoWriMo. I wrote 50,000 words in a month in November of, 8 years ago. And just to see, so I think I started with volume. I mean, can I meet the sheer volume of words that is required to write a novel? Can I put down that many words? Was my first kind of test for myself. I did. I wrote 1,700 words a day. I divided it perfectly, and I wrote 7 days a week. And I put down a story. It made no sense. But the idea is that you have to just simply write. I think that's my learning to begin with. And then I did a couple of courses, online courses at Oxford, to see if the craft bit was going to make any sense to me. And those were like 5 or 6 week courses. I got feedback for my final product, and so there is definitely a lot of craft, but there is I think there is some, like, you have to have a bit of talent, a bit of like so I wanted to see if I had that little kind of sparky thing that would make people want to read what I've written. So I tested myself with that, and I got good feedback. So then I applied to fine arts programs in the US, and I did a low residency one. My daughter was only 12 at the time. So we did, so I went five times to the US for a few weeks at a time, and came back and did my assignments and so on. And that was extremely, I would say, it was fantastic. I was not a literature student. I was a business and marketing student, and then I got an MBA. I worked in the corporate world for 22 years. I was very, very wrong-brained, whichever is the one that is not creative. I was very analytical and very, my daughter told me that my first 50,000 words was like a report. So I kind of got that. So the MFA was extremely helpful for me because I read, and I just counted, I just kind of went back and I did 42 annotations in a period of 2 years. So that's 42 books that I read and annotated. Annotated is like, it's a 2-page, thing that you kind of pick some craft element in the book and you write about it. You search for something and that appeals to you, that is craft related, that is not about the idea or the story. It's about how it's written, right? So that sort of a thing. In fact, my next article that comes out in the Daily Guardian on Monday is about that. It is about reading well. So, you have to read a lot if you want to be a good writer, and you have to read well because you have to see how the writer is putting that point across. How is it that they're telling the story, and what they're using in the way of words, punctuation, tense, and how that changes if the situation is an intense one versus a casual one, and so on. So those are the kinds of things that I think you really learn well in an MFA, because it's a drill. You do tons of them and you read a lot and you literally just dissect everything that you read.
And now we come to your title and the book as such, which is The Lady's Tailor. Now, writing about partition, how did you take the garment business? What were the reasons for you picking up on the garment business?
So, I've been telling my husband for years now that I want to go to Lahore. Why, I can't explain. Of course, my grandparents didn't come from Lahore, they came from Gujar Khan, north of, in the northern part of Pakistan. And I've been telling him that we need to find a way to go to Lahore. So I had to find a profession which would take my characters to Pakistan. And I was like, there were halwais and there's a lot of food related stuff. And I talk about food a lot in my book because I like food. But then I kind of looked into that because I was like, you can go all the way to Pakistan and you can try to bring a special halwai or a special, I don't know, somebody who makes kebabs like nobody's business or something like that. But I thought that the fashion thing, the tailoring and the clothing and the embroidery, particularly the embroidery, it just will be so interesting to learn a little bit more about that. So I went in that direction, and so that I could go back to Pakistan in my book, in my story, so that I could explore Lahore, through research if I can't go. And which is what I did. So I went into the bazaars and I went into as much of Lahore as I could, into Model Town and into the center city and so on, because I really wanted the book to go back there. That's the reason. That is the reason for picking embroidery and because everybody I think talks about the embroidery for Pakistan still. So I was like, okay, this is one area that is going to take me back, so let's go with this.
So it's just Lahore ni takiya aur jamia nahi. So in a way you've gone there before you went physically. Now coming back to your very interesting book, when I picked it up to read it, I wasn't sure, I'll confess, because I wondered maybe it's treated too lightly, maybe there's, what kind of way of looking at partition. But once I started reading it, I just couldn't give it up. And I stayed awake, I think, for 2 or 3 hours and finished it and then went to sleep. So it's written in such a racy, dusty way. And also the parts where, the protagonist goes to Lahore and discovers so many things. including the parents he had thought no more. What kind of a research did this volume involve?
Yeah, you know, it's very interesting. I think coming back to Mr. Sanu's comments about India and us not really, you know, there's a lot of things that we haven't really researched.